Hi everybody, and welcome to Garden Style. So today we're going to go over houseplants, and what I'm going to try to cover in this video with you folks are easy tips on how you can care for your plants during the winter months. Let's face it, during the month of January, February, it is still just a little too cold to be going outside. So if you're anxious to get your hands dirty, what a better time of the year than to start taking care of your current houseplants that you have at home, or learn a little bit before you go out and buy new ones. So some basic things about houseplants is, first of all, when you go to purchase a houseplant, it's a really good idea to look up its background. Where does it grow normally in its natural environment? And that'll give you a really good idea as to what type of environment you need to provide for it once you get it home. So there are three basic needs that houseplants have. One is water, all different kinds. Two is really good soil. And three, you need to know what kind of light it requires. Now, most houseplants are tropical, and most of those tropical houseplants usually grow in the understory of other trees in their natural environment, but not all of them. And some of them have like dappled shade as opposed to deep shade. So that's the reason houseplants can grow so easily in our homes. However, they all have different types of water needs, and a real easy way to know what to do with your houseplant once you get it home is take a good long look at the leaves. What kind of leaves does your houseplant have? For instance, if your houseplant has thicker leaves, and here I'm just going to pick up your typical African violet. Just about everybody has had one of these or has tried one of these. And you'll notice that they have a thicker leaf to them, and they also have a little bit of fur on their leaves. Now, African violets normally grow in dappled shade in their normal environment. However, they're usually grown in drier conditions. Thus, they have evolved to keep thicker leaves. So usually the thicker the leaf on a plant, the more water it can store in between waterings. So we're always telling folks that the biggest killer of an African violet is you're showing it way too much love, and that means overwatering. So the best trick to figuring out how much to water your African violets, or anything that has a thicker leaf on it, like for instance, this is what we call a zigzag plant or succulent plant, and it also has extremely thick leaves. So it's kind of a hint or a clue for you folks that it doesn't need near as much water as, say, something like a fern. For instance, this fern, an asparagus fern, has very fine needles on it, needle-type leaves. So it's going to require higher humidity as well as a little more watering than, say, your African violets do. So I'm going to go back to the most common houseplant, your African violet. You can find it just about anywhere, and usually you're getting them in these plastic containers. Sometimes they're even inserted inside of a foil sleeve. So I'm always recommending to folks to get it out of the plastic and out of the sleeve as fast as possible, because its roots need more air than most houseplants do. And I've had the best of luck at home putting my African violets inside of a clay pot. The clay is porous, it lets in more air, and you have a tendency to not overwater it, as the clay has a tendency to wick some of that moisture away from the roots of your African violet. So just a simple little trick or a hint there as to what you can do for any of your plants with a thicker leaf on them. Put them in clay rather than a glazed pot or plastic, and only water it when you have stuck your finger in at least 2 to 3 inches. And I'm a true believer in the finger test. You can get a moisture meter if you want to, but I'm a true believer in testing with your fingers first, because they will tell you whether or not they need water. And I usually wait until this thing is almost completely dry before I give it more water. And trust me, they'll tell you. Sometimes they'll start to wilt. But I try really hard to stay ahead of that and just water it when it absolutely needs it. And keep in mind, during the wintertime, a lot of your houseplants are going to slow down and not grow near as much as they do during the spring and the summer. They sense the light, and when they're not getting as much light, they in turn will start to calm down during the wintertime, which means you don't have to water them quite as often. Now, another factor to keep in mind with houseplants is the humidity level in the house. A lot of your plants, let me show you another really pretty one here. This is a calathea, or it's in the calathea family, with these beautiful tropical leaves, but you notice they're kind of thin and flat. And a real common question we get here in the store is, why is my leaves turning brown on the edges? Most of the time it has to do with inconsistent watering. You're letting it get too dry in between waterings, or it's not getting enough humidity in the air. And there are several ways you can solve that problem, either by adding a humidifier to your home, which is a really good idea because not only do your plants love it, but we do too as humans. But it's good for them so that they're not drying out too much. Really, really dry air and sometimes too much light is the ticket. Like a plant like this can grow almost in deep shade in a dark corner of the house, and that's where it will be happiest rather than in the window. We have found here at the nursery that we can't put these type of plants in the window where they're going to get any type of direct sunlight during the day, because it will singe the leaves and it has a tendency to dry them out even faster. So a plant like this, you would want to put your finger in and test the soil in it up to about 2 inches. So if it's dry to about this far down into the pot, that's probably a good idea to give it a watering. Other things that cause your leaves to turn brown or even yellow on the edges is too many minerals in the water. Now here in the Northwest we have a high mineral content in our water. So minerals and salts will start to collect in your houseplants over the years as you've had them. So it's a real good idea to take these plants, put them in the sink, and either grab distilled water or like bottled water and wash the plant through. And you want to pour the water inside to where it's completely dripping out the bottom. Wait until it stops dripping and then do it again. And what that does is it helps leach a lot of those minerals and salts out of the soil down underneath the house plant, and it'll start to feel a lot better. Trim off some of the older leaves, the ones that are looking yellow and kind of crispy on the edges, and you'll notice in no time flat, as soon as you've given it a feeding, it'll start to send up much new growth, and it'll be a much happier plant because it's in better soil. Now, of course, if it's been in the same pot, and I've had quite a few people bring their plants in where they've been in the same pot for 3 or 4 years, it's a good idea to change out the soil. And all that requires, a lot of times, is rather than giving them an even bigger pot, it's a lot of times if their roots aren't hitting the edges of the pot and they've been in there a while, pull it out, knock off all the old dirt from the roots, put in new soil into the pot, and then plant your plant into the new soil. And again, it'll feel a lot better. It's going to get more nutrients from the soil, more air. Just like us, they need a change of environment now and then, and they'll start to feel a lot better. What else about watering? Humidity levels in the house definitely fluctuate during the winter time as opposed to the spring and the summer, because our windows are closed, our doors are closed, and we've got the heat on. Normally it's from a fireplace or central air, and that really dries the air out. So other ways you can add more humidity to the air besides just buying a humidifier, which seems to be the most efficient for me in my home. You can also place a lot of your plants on a tray, fill it with pebbles, and then pour water in it. And the idea behind the pebbles is so it's sitting on the pebbles and it's creating humidity, but it's not soaking up all the water, in turn, overwatering your plants. But it'll sit on that tray, and that helps to evaporate some of that water in the tray and helps to keep their leaves from turning brown from the dry air. Now there are other plants like, got all kinds of cute little specimens here. Take for instance a peperomia. This happens to be the variegated version, very popular houseplant, extremely easy to grow. And this is another one. It has a little bit of a thicker leaf, so I usually let these dry out a couple of inches into the pot down here before I go in to water them again. So don't be afraid to back off the watering a little bit. Now, as for myself, I'm guilty of underwatering. I have a tendency to get really busy and I forget about my houseplants. So I have learned to put myself on a regular routine every Sunday. I'll go around and I'll do the finger test on all my houseplants. And you can do the same thing. Set your calendar, set your phone as a reminder at least once a week to go around, check all your houseplants, and make sure they're getting the watering that they need, as well as the humidity. Now there are some other pests that come with houseplants naturally. I've had a lot of folks complain about gnats, flying gnats in their home, and they're like, it's the middle of winter, the bugs should be dead, why do I have gnats in my house? Normally, gnats come in on the soil, or they manage to get into your house in the fall, lay their eggs down into the soil, and before you know it, they're hatching, and you've got little fruit flies flying all over the house. So I have a cool little idea for you, if I can get the word out of my mouth. There is a bottle of mosquito bits. And you can find these just about anywhere. It's a granular that you can find in a jar like this. Well, not only is it good for mosquitoes, but it's excellent for gnats. And something we do here in the store, because we don't want to have fruit flies flying all over the store, is we grab a little netting, like a tea bag type of netting. We take a few of these mosquito bits, maybe a handful, put it inside the net, and then stick it down into your watering can. And we are in the habit of filling a watering can, putting that down inside, and we let the water sit overnight, and that helps some of the extra minerals and salts and things settle down to the bottom. But by having these inside of your watering can, every time you water, it's going to guard against gnats and flying fruit flies. So that's just a neat little trick for you if you've got fruit flies sitting in your house, and it's normally where they're coming from are your houseplants. Another thing you can do is put rocks or gravel on top of the soil underneath your houseplants. And what that does is discourage that little gnat from flying in there and laying eggs. It discourages them from going in there because it's not a real hospitable place to be laying their eggs, as it would be as if you had just left it with bare soil. So there's a couple of neat hints for you to cut down on the fruit flies that are flying around in your home in the middle of winter. It can be highly annoying. Okay. Another thing you want to remember is to feed your plants. And I feed mine maybe once every couple of months, and that's usually from March until October, and that I don't feed them at all during the winter time, because again, they normally slow down and they're kind of going into a semi-dormancy period during the winter anyway. And this is something I recommend. I have a liquid fertilizer here. It's from Espoma. It is super easy to use. You mix it with water, dilute it, water it into your plants, and it also has a little measuring cap here that you can use to measure with, which just makes it simple because it's all in one. You can also use a Miracle-Gro fertilizer, but I prefer liquid fertilizers as opposed to granular when it comes to your houseplants, or even fertilizer spikes. You'll see the Job's fertilizer spikes. A lot of times people use them for trees and that sort of thing. Well, you can use them in your houseplants as well, and that way you don't have to remember when to fertilize your plants. They will be fed every time you water. So this is another really good product by Espoma. It's all organic, and I just find it one of the easiest things to use on houseplants. Okay, the next major thing is bugs. The most prevalent bug that a lot of folks see on their houseplants are aphids, and they can be the bane of your existence if you can't get rid of them. Now, if you notice the little bugs sitting on your plants, and I'll give you a sample of what they look like in the picture down below. First thing you can try is a little soapy water and just spray them off with the sprayer, and a lot of times that will do the trick. However, if you've come across them and you have a really heavy infestation, then it's time to pull out the big guns. So the first thing I would do is take it to the sink, rinse off as many of those bugs as you possibly can in the sink, and that's underneath the leaves as well as on top. And then you can apply a systemic, a houseplant systemic. And I would go through and check all my other plants as well. The aphids will normally start in the newest growth on a plant. That's the most tender growth. And they're just teeny little bugs, and what they do is they suck the juices literally out of the plant. And if they get thick enough, and they just keep multiplying like rabbits, they're actually worse than rabbits, they will actually suck the life out of your plant, and that's the last thing you want to do. And they're super easy to get rid of. It's just a matter of getting on top of them in time. Another thing you can use is a systemic. And what a systemic is, and this one just happens to be by Bonide, and it's a houseplant systemic. It's not quite as strong as what you would use outdoors. Something that's made for houseplants. You mix it with water. You'll water it in, and the plant will literally take the systemic up inside the plant so that whatever is chewing on it will die. And this is probably one of my favorite ways to get rid of bugs. And I actually just give them a systemic about once a year, just to ensure the fact that nothing new is going to get started on my plant. So this is a great deterrent, all organic, and it's a great way to go as far as taking care of bugs on your houseplants. Another nasty pest is spider mites. And they are just teeny tiny little red spiders, and you will notice maybe some super fine webbing that's getting started on your plants, and they are the worst to try and get rid of if they get too bad. First, you'll notice the leaves starting to yellow and look a little sickly, and you immediately want to flip that leaf over, and you may see some webbing on the underneath of the leaf, and if you do, you most likely have spider mites. Now, if your plants are left to get too dry, or they're sitting in a really dry environment, that's usually what invites spider mites. However, I have brought new specimens home, new houseplants, and had no idea there were any bugs on them. And suddenly, before I know it, I have an outbreak, and I'll know exactly who the culprit is. So again, I will take it to the sink, give it a good rinsing inside and out, let it dry, and you can either use a systemic. There are also sprays that you can use. Espoma has an insect control spray just made for houseplants, and you want to spray the tops as well as the underneath of the leaves and the soil as much as possible. They will have a tendency to drop their eggs or themselves down into the soil, and they can just start popping up again. So give it a spray once, check it in a couple of weeks, and you may have to do it again to knock them out. But usually that'll do the trick. And if it doesn't, then you've got the backup plan. Start using a systemic. So when the plant takes it up inside, the bugs can no longer survive. They'll no longer have a hospitable environment to suck the life out of your plants. So those are the two most common pests that you will have in your houseplants. Of course, if you've noticed something else or something different on your plants, by all means ask me some questions. Put that in the description box down below, and I'll be more than happy to answer those questions for you. But those are some real basic things that you need to know about houseplants. And then the next thing I'm going to cover is light. Now, light is very important when it comes to houseplants. If you have a plant like this that can survive great in a dark corner, fantastic. However, there are other plants that require just a little more light. For instance, like your African violets that grow in a dappled light. And I find if I put these on the north or east side of the house in a windowsill, that seems to be where they are happiest. They just love it there. But I highly recommend any type of plant that you're going to bring home, look it up, see what it likes in its normal environment, and they'll give you a really good idea how you can treat it once you get it home. Okay, also wanted to let you guys know that here at the Sunnycrest Nursery, we have a service where if you're too afraid to repot a plant due to its size, or you're just not sure about it, that's a service that we actually offer here at the nursery. We will repot your houseplants for you. We'll even help you pick out a new pot. So when it comes to the soil, you definitely want a soil that's made specifically for houseplants. It's a little lighter mix, it has really good drainage, and they're usually honed in on what the plants really need. They have a nice compost mixture mixed in with the soil, so not only can it hold moisture, but it also helps to naturally feed your plants and give air to the roots. Don't ever use soil from outside and bring it in and plant your houseplants in it. That is a major no-no. You have no idea what's in that soil. Bugs, worms, who knows what's in that soil. You want to get a specially made mixture, and most of your nurseries and garden centers will carry them for you. We use Espoma. We also use Miracle Grow, depending on what your likes and dislikes are, for the houseplants. They've been composted, they're sterile, and they're just an excellent mixture for your plants. So that'll help you get them off to a really good start when you go to transplant them. Okay, that's some serious basics on houseplants and a few tips for you on how you can take care of them, help you get comfortable with them if you're just now getting interested in them. They are hugely popular right now. Houseplants serve several different purposes. The first most important thing is they're clean, they keep the air clean, they're pretty, and they're a great aesthetic to add to any home on the inside. So there you go. Quick lesson on houseplants for you. We're currently running a sale on houseplants. We usually do during the winter time. Most of your garden centers do until we start to pick up and get busy for the spring season. So drop in, see what's new. There's all kinds of really awesome varieties out there. All right, you guys, hope you're having a fantastic winter. Any questions you may have, you can put them in the description box below, and I'll do my very best to get back to you. Otherwise, have a fantastic day, and we'll talk again soon. Bye for now.